Good day, everyone. As we enter the new normal, we opted to adjust to our situation. Here's the presentation report of our group for Chapter 7.
Hi, welcome. Now, we will tackle about basic assumptions, human needs, relatedness, and transcendence of Eric Fromm Humanistic Psychoanalysis. Fromm's most basic assumption is that individual personality can be understood only in the light of human history. Fromm said that human or existential needs grow out of attempts to find meaning in life. He also believed that humans have been torn away from their prehistoric union with nature and left no powerful instincts to adapt to a changing world. Instead, they have acquired the facility to reason, a condition called human dilemma. People experience this basic dilemma because they have become separate from nature and yet have the capacity to be aware of themselves as isolated beings. The human ability to reason is both a blessing and a curse. A blessing in the sense that it permits people to survive, and a curse because it forces them to attempt to solve basic insoluble dichotomies. The first and most fundamental dichotomy is that between life and death. Self-awareness and reason to tell us that we will die, but we try to negate this dichotomy by postulating life after death. Second, humans are capable of conceptualizing the goal of complete self-realization, but we are aware that life is too short to reach the goal. Yes, though some people try to solve this dichotomy by assuming that their own historical period is the crowning achievement of humanity, while others postulate a continuation of development after death. The third is people are ultimately alone, yet we cannot tolerate isolation, meaning they are aware of themselves as separate individual and at the same time they believe that their happiness depends on uniting with their fellow human beings. Fromms referred to this as existential dichotomies. The human needs. Humans are motivated by such physiological needs such as hunger, sex, and safety, but they can never resolve the human dilemma by satisfying these needs. To Fromm, only the distinctive human needs can move people toward a reunion with the natural world. Human need or existential need is a need in which a person finds answer to his or her existence. People find answer to their existence that correspond to their total human needs. The human needs are relatedness, transcendence, rootedness, a sense of identity, and a frame of orientation. The first human need is relatedness. It is the drive for union with another person or other persons. Relatedness can take the form of submission, power, and love. A person can submit to another in order to become one with the world. In this way, he transcends the separateness of his individual existence by becoming part of somebody, in connection with the power to which he has submitted. When a submissive person and a domineering person find each other, they frequently establish a symbiotic relationship, one that is satisfying to both partners. However, people in a symbiotic relationship are drawn to one another not by love, but by a desperate need for relatedness, a need that can never be completely satisfied. In fact, they find themselves seeking additional submission or power, which made them become more dependent on their partners and less of an individual. Love, according to Fromm, is a union with somebody or ability to unite with another. It is the only route by which a person can become unified with the world and at the same time achieve individuality and integrity. Also, it is the only relatedness need that can solve our basic human dilemma. It enables a person to satisfy the need for relatedness, which surrendering integrity and independence. Therefore, in love, two people become one, yet remain two. In the art of loving, Fromm identified the four basic elements of love. These are care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. Someone who loves another person must care for that person and be willing to take care of him or her. Love also means responsibility, that is, a willingness and ability to respond. A person who loves others responds to their physical and psychological needs, respect them for who they are, and avoid the temptation of trying to change them. But people can respect others only if they have knowledge of them. To know others means to see them from their own point of view. Thus, care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge are all entwined in a love relationship. The next human need is transcendence. It defined as the urge to rise above a passive and accidental existence and into the realm of purposefulness and freedom. Humans are thrown into the world without their consent and then removed from it again without their will. People can transcend their passive nature by creating life or by destroying it. Humans can destroy through malignant aggression or killing for reasons other than survival, but they can also create and care about their creations. In addition, malignant aggression, consisting of sadism and a passionate desire for cruelty and destruction, is the result of exploitation and manipulation, which in Fromm's opinion produces boredom and triviality.
Rootedness. It is the third existential need of human. The need to establish bonds with others that provide security and reduce isolation and insignificance. Rootedness can be defined as productive or non-productive strategy. Productive is when a person becomes independent and fully grown. It is to grow beyond the security of our mother and establish ties with the outside world. Non-productive when a person seeks rootedness through fixation. People who strive for rootedness through fixation are afraid to take the next step of birth, to be weaned from the mother's breast. They have a deep craving to be mothered, nursed, protected by a motherly figure. They are the externally dependent ones who are frightened and insecure when motherly protection is withdrawn. This is based from 1955, page 40. Fromm agreed with Freud that incestuous desires are universal, but disagreed with Freud's belief that they are essentially sexual. According to Fromm, in 1955, page 40 to 41, incestuous feelings are based in the deep-seated craving to remain in or to return to the all-enveloping womb or to all-nourishing breast. Fromm was influenced by Johann Jacob Bachofen's ideas on matriarchal societies. Unlike Freud, who believed that early societies were patriarchal, Bachofen held that the mother was the central figure in these ancient social groups. It was she who provided roots for her children and motivated them either to develop their individuality and reason or to become fixated and incapable of psychological growth. Fromm's in 1997 strong preference for Bachofen's mother-centered theory of the Oedipal situation over Freud's father-centered conception is consistent with his preference for older women. Sense of identity. It is the fourth existential need of human. It is the capacity to be aware of ourselves as a separated entity. Because we have been torn away from nature, we need to form a concept of ourselves to be able to say, I am I. Fromm, in 1981, believed that former people identified more closely with their clan and did not see themselves as individuals existing apart from their group. Even during medieval times, people were identified largely by their social role in the feudal hierarchy. In agreement with Marx, Fromm believed that the rise of capitalism has given people more economic and political freedom. However, this freedom has given only a minority of people a true sense of I. The identity of most people still resides in their attachment to others or to institutions such as nation, religion, occupation, or social group. Frame of orientation. It is the fifth existential need of human. Humans need a roadmap, a frame of orientation, to make their way through the world. Without such a map, humans would be confused and unable to act purposefully and consistently. It is based from 1973, page 230. It is productively as movement towards rational goal and non-productively as striving for irrational goals. A frame of orientation enables people to organize the various stimuli that impinge on them. A roadmap without goal or destination is worthless. Humans have the mental capacity to imagine many alternative paths to follow, to keep them from going insane. However, they need a final goal or object of devotion. We have to make some sense of our life, rather. We just cannot stand living, merely eating and drinking, and not making sense. We have to give some answer to the problem of living, and we have to give some answer theoretically and practically. By this, I mean that we need a frame of reference in which we orient ourselves in life, which makes the process in living and our position in it somehow sensible and meaningful. This is not only an intellectual frame of reference, but we need also an organizing principles of an object and devotion, of something to which we devote our energies beyond those which we need for producing and reproducing. Summary of human needs. People are motivated by five distinctively human needs. First is the relatedness, second, transcendence, third, rootedness, fourth, a sense of identity, five, frame of orientation. Table 7.1. It shows that relatedness can be satisfied through submission, domination, or love, but only love produces authentic fulfillment. Transcendence can be satisfied by either destructiveness or creativeness, but only the latter permits joy. Rootedness can be satisfied either by fixation to the mother or by moving forward into full birth and wholeness. The sense of identity can be based on adjustment to the group, or it can be satisfied through creative movement toward individuality. And a frame of orientation may be either irrational or rational, but only a rational philosophy can serve as a basis for the growth of total personality. From 1981.
The burden of freedom. The central thesis of Fromm's writings is that humans have been torn from nature, yet they remain part of the natural world, subject to the same physical limitations as other animals. As the only animal possessing self-awareness, imagination, and reason, humans are the freaks of the universe. Reason is both a curse and a blessing. It is responsible for feelings of isolation and loneliness, but it is also the process that enables humans to become reunited with the world. Historically, as people gained more and more economic and political freedom, they came to feel increasingly more isolated. For example, during the Middle Ages, people had relatively little personal freedom. They were anchored to prescribed roles in society, roles that provided security, dependability, and certainty. Then, as they acquired more freedom to move both socially and geographically, they found that they were free from the security of a fixed position in the world. They were no longer tied to one geographic region, one social order, or one occupation. They became separated from their roots and isolated from one another. A parallel experience exists on a personal level. As children become more independent of their mothers, They gain more freedom to express their individuality, to move around unsupervised, to choose their friends, clothes, and so on. At the same time, they experience the burden of freedom. That is, they are free from the security of being one with the mother. On both a social and an individual level, this burden of freedom results in basic anxiety, the feeling of being alone in the world. Mechanisms of escape. Because basic anxiety produces a frightening sense of isolation and aloneness, people attempt to flee from freedom through a variety of escape mechanisms. In Escape from Freedom, Fromm, in 1941, identified three primary mechanisms of escape: authoritarianism, destructiveness, and conformity. And like Horney's neurotic trends, Fromm's mechanisms of escape are the driving forces in normal people, both individually and collectively. Authoritarianism. Fromm in 1941 defined authoritarianism as the tendency to give up the independence of one's own individual self and to fuse oneself with somebody or something outside oneself, in order to acquire the strength which the individual is lacking. This need to unite with a powerful partner can take one of two forms: masochism or sadism. Masochism results from basic feelings of powerlessness, weakness, and inferiority and is aimed at joining the self to a more powerful person or institution. Masochistic strivings often are disguised as love or loyalty, but unlike love and loyalty, they can never contribute positively to independence and authenticity. Compared with masochism, sadism is more neurotic and more socially harmful. Like masochism, sadism is aimed at reducing basic anxiety through achieving unity with another person or persons. Fromm in 1941 identified three kinds of sadistic tendencies, all more or less clustered together. The first is the need to make others dependent on oneself and to gain power over those who are weak. The second is the compulsion to exploit others, to take advantage of them, and to use them for one's benefit or pleasure. A third sadistic tendency is the desire to see others suffer, either physically or psychologically.
Fromm's second mechanism of escape is destructiveness. Just like authoritarianism, destructiveness is rooted in the feelings of aloneness, isolation, and powerlessness. But unlike sadism and masochism, destructiveness does not depend on a continuous relationship with another person. Instead, it seeks to do away with other people. So if ang authoritarianism needs to unite or makisama with another person or to a powerful person, destructiveness is its opposite. Both person or a nation can employ this escape by destroying other people and objects para ma-restore or to restore the lost feelings of power. However, by doing this such, there's a tendency that destructive people attain a type of perverted isolation because of grabe na pag-eliminate sa outside world. The third means of escape is conformity. People who conform try to escape from a sense of aloneness and isolation by giving up their individuality and becoming whatever other people desire them to be. People who most likely to conform are like robots. It was like they let other people control their lives. They become what other people want them to be. Sinusunod yung whims ng ibang tao kesa sa sarili nila, and even seldom express their own opinions. Maybe some of us know someone like this. Someone na nakadepend sa ibang tao or sa standard ng society kung ano yung dapat na gagawin niya and how he or she will behave. Also, this kind of people often appear stiff and automated. People of the modern world are free to act according to their own will. But because of so much freedom that was given to people, sometimes they do not know what they want, think, or feel. Thus, they conform to an unknown or anonymous authority and lost the sense of self-authenticity. The more people conform, the more powerless they feel. The more powerless they feel, the more they must conform. But people can break this cycle of conformity and powerlessness only by achieving self-realization or positive freedom. Now, what is positive freedom? According to Fromm, a person can be free and not alone, critical and yet not filled with doubts, independent and yet an integral part of mankind. In other words, although we have given up so much freedom, this does not lead inevitably to the bondage of isolation and aloneness. People can attain this kind of freedom, called positive freedom, by a spontaneous and full expression of both their rational and their emotional potentialities. We can frequently see this spontaneous activity in kids or small children and in artists who have no tendency at all to conform to whatever others want them to be. So in short, they do not depend on other people. They are in control of their own lives. They behave or act according to their basic natures and not according to conventional rules. Through spontaneous activity and positive freedom, people overcome the fear of aloneness and achieve union with the world, but at the same time maintain individuality. This makes positive freedom represent a successful solution to the human dilemma, which is being part of the natural world and yet separate from it. There are twin components of positive freedom, and that is love and work. Through active love and work, humans can achieve unity with one another and with the world without losing their individuality or sacrificing their integrity. They affirm their uniqueness as individuals and achieve full realization of their potentialities.
For the continuation of the report, we are going to tackle about character orientations. Character orientation in Fromm's theory. It is a person's relatively permanent way of relating to people and things. It is defined personality as a totality of inherited and acquired psychic qualities which are characteristic of one individual and which make the individual unique. A character is a substitute for lack of instincts. The most important of the acquired qualities of personality is character, defined as the relatively permanent system of all non-instinctual strivings through which man relates himself to the human and natural world. Two ways to relate to the world. First, assimilation or non-productive, by acquiring and using things. Second, socialization or being productive, by relating to self and to other people. Non-productive orientation. Strategies that fail to move people closer to positive freedom and self-realization. Not entirely negative. Each has both a negative and positive aspect. Personality is always a blend or combination of several orientations, even though one orientation is dominant. Four kinds of non-productive orientation. First is receptive, second is exploitative, third, hoarding, fourth, marketing. First, we're going to discuss about the receptive. They feel that the source of all good lies outside themselves and that the only way they can relate to the world is to receive things, including love, knowledge, and material possessions. They are more concerned with receiving than with giving, and they want others to shower them with love and ideas and gifts. Positive traits of receptive character. One of the positive traits would be loyalty. As they receive more from people around them, they become loyal to a person as they receive more from that person. Second, they always receive things openly and they can easily accept anything, which means the second positive trait is the acceptance. Third would be trust. Trust would be two ways. People tend to trust a receptive type of person because they just listen, and the receptive person would also trust the person who would shower them with anything, for example, is the attention of the person talking to them. Here comes the negative traits of having receptive character. First is being passive. It happens because they tend to receive more and they forget how to give back. Second is being submissive. Because they are passive, they agree to everything other people say, so they become submissive to other people. Third is lack of confidence. They lack confidence because they are not used to do stuff on their own. They always receive things from people, may it be love, affection, etc. They rely to people around them. The next character is exploitative. Exploitative character believe that the source of all good is outside themselves. This is the opposite of the receptive character. Unlike receptive people, however, they are aggressively take what they desire rather than passively receive it. In their social relationships, they are likely to use cunning or force to take someone else's spouse's ideas or property. They are willing to express an opinion, but it is usually an opinion that has been pilfered or stolen. Example: an exploitative man may fall in love with a married woman, not so much because he is truly fond of her, but he wishes to exploit her husband. Here are the positive traits of exploitative character, even if it sounds all negative. First is being impulsive. Even if impulsiveness also has a negative side, but it is also considered as positive as it may help you to decide in an emergency situation that really needs a quick decision. Second is being proud of what they have become or achieved and they are not afraid to show it. Third is being charming. It would mean that they could easily catch someone's eye or they can easily catch someone because of their character, mostly. Fourth would be self-confident. As they're proud of themselves, they're much more confident than the receptive character type. They are well composed of themselves. The opposite are the negative traits of exploitative character. The first is egocentric. They become egocentric when they're overconfident with everything they do, and they do not take criticisms easily because of their ego. Second is being conceited, that they think highly of themselves every time. They think that they are good with everything they do, just like being egocentric. Third is arrogant. That is almost similar with egocentric and being conceited, but being arrogant means that they are exaggerating their abilities to do something. Lastly is seducing. Like what we had with example, a man seduces the wife of another man, even if he is not fond of the woman or he does not like her, because he just purely wants to exploit the husband of the woman.
The next non-productive orientation is the hoarding character type. According to the DSM-5, hoarding is actually a disorder, described as a pattern of compulsive behavior involving accumulating numerous possessions that we really don't need. Hoarding characters seek to save that which they have already obtained. These type of people care more about their material possessions than people and relationships. They keep money, feelings, and thoughts to themselves. They have difficulty discarding or parting with their possessions, regardless of their actual value. These materials help these type of people cope with insecurities by never parting with materials they keep. Hence, they tend to live in the past and are repelled by anything new. Similar to Freud's anal characters, hoarding characters are excessively orderly, stubborn, and miserly. Fromm, however, believed that hoarding characters' anal traits are not the result of sexual drives, but rather are part of their general interest in inanimate objects. Hoarding characters have both negative and positive traits. Hoarding characters are rigid. They are devoid of flexibility as they do not wish to come across anything new and prefer to live in their past. Sterility or fruitlessness. They are not productive because they are repulsed by anything new. Again, they tend to stick to their past. Obstinacy. Because they don't like anything new, hoarding characters do not believe new information as they dislike the feeling of unfamiliarity. They are also compulsive and lack creativity. Hoarding characters' positive traits are orderliness, cleanliness, and punctuality. Another character orientation is the marketing character type. These types see themselves as commodities. They adjust their personality to what is currently in fashion. They see themselves as being in constant demand and must make others believe they're this and they're that. This character plays many roles and are guided by the motto, I am as you desire me. This type is prevalent in the workplace. Employees who want their employer to be impressed by proving they're able to do any task. Marketing character types are without a past nor future and have no permanent principles or values because they constantly change who they are. In a relationship, marketing types look at relationships in terms of what they can gain from the exchange. For example, they might focus on marrying someone for money or social status and tend to have shallow and anxious personalities. The negative traits of marketing character types are aimlessness. They lack a definite purpose or plan because they do not have any permanent goals as well as principles or values. Opportunistic because they have no problems in changing their beliefs and values depending on what they think will get them ahead of others. These types are also inconsistent and wasteful. Although fewer than other orientations, marketing types have also positive traits like changeability, open-mindedness, and generosity. The last character type to be discussed is the productive character type. Fromm described this type to be the healthiest of all characters because they work toward positive freedom and a continuing realization of their potential. Productive character types have three dimensions: working, loving, and reasoning. They value their work as a means of creative self-expression. They channel negative emotion into productive work. Productive character types do not work to exploit others. Instead, these individuals want to influence people through love, reason, and example, not by force. These types are concerned with the growth and development of themselves and others.
Personality disorders. It is a way of thinking, feeling, and behaving that deviates from the expectation of the culture, causes distress or problems functioning, and lasts over time. If healthy people are able to work, love, and think productively, then unhealthy personalities are more likely to have problems in these three areas, especially failure to love productively. According to Fromm, psychologically disturbed people are incapable of love and have failed to establish union with others. In connection to this dilemma, he discussed three severe personality disorders, and these are necrophilia, malignant narcissism, and incestuous symbiosis. Necrophilia. The term necrophilia means love of death and usually refers to a sexual perversion in which a person desires sexual contact with a corpse. However, Fromm used necrophilia in a more generalized sense to denote any attraction to death. According to him, necrophilia is the passionate attraction to all that is dead, decayed, putrid, or sickly. It is the passion to transform that which is alive into something unalive, to destroy for the sake of destruction. Necrophilic personalities hate humanity. They are racist, warmongers, and bullies. They love bloodshed, destruction, terror, and torture, and they delight in destroying life. Necrophilous people do not simply behave in a destructive manner. Rather, their destructive behavior is a reflection of their basic character. All people behave aggressively and destructively at times, but the entire lifestyle of the necrophilous person revolves around death, destruction, disease, and decay. Malignant narcissism. Narcissistic personality disorder is a mental condition in which people have an inflated sense of their own importance. All people display some necrophilic behavior. Pseudo-all have some narcissistic tendencies. Healthy people manifest a benign form of narcissism, that is, an interest in their own body. However, in its malignant form, narcissism impedes the perception of reality so that everything belonging to a narcissistic person is highly valued, and everything belonging to another is devalued. Narcissistic people achieve security by holding on to the distorted belief that their extraordinary qualities give them superiority over everyone else. Their sense of worth depends on their narcissistic self-image and not on their achievements. When their efforts are criticized by others, they react with anger and rage, frequently striking out against the critics trying to destroy them. The criticism is overwhelming, they may be unable to destroy it, and so they turn their rage inward. The result is depression, feeling of worthlessness. People who are fixated on themselves are likely to internalize experiences and to dwell on both physical health and moral virtues. Narcissistic individuals are preoccupied with themselves, but this concern is not limited to admiring themselves in a mirror. Preoccupation with one's body often leads to hypochondriasis and moral hypochondriasis. Hypochondriasis, also known as health anxiety, is an obsessive attention to one's health. For example, a person with minor cough may think that they have tuberculosis. Moral hypochondriasis, preoccupation with guilt about previous transgressions. The third pathological orientation is the incestuous symbiosis. It is characterized as an extreme dependence on the mother or mother surrogate. Incestuous symbiosis is an exaggerated form of the more common and more benign mother fixation. For example, men with a mother fixation need women to care for them, dote on them, and admire them. They feel somewhat anxious and depressed when their needs are not fulfilled. This condition is relatively normal and does not greatly interfere with the other person and their daily life. When incestuous symbiosis, however, people are inseparable from the host person. Their personalities are blended with the other person, and their individual identities are lost. Incestuous symbiosis originates in infancy as a natural attachment to the mothering one. The attachment is more crucial and fundamental than any sexual interest that may develop during the Oedipal period. People living in incestuous symbiotic relationship feel extremely anxious and frightened that relationship is threatened. The incestuous orientation distorts reasoning powers, destroys the capacity for authentic love, and prevents people from achieving independence and integrity.
Psychotherapy. Fromm was trained as an orthodox Freudian analyst but became bored with standard analytic techniques. Quote unquote, with time, I came to see that my boredom stemmed from the fact that I was not in touch with the life of my patients. He then evolved his own system of therapy, which he called Humanistic Psychoanalysis. His Humanistic Psychoanalysis looks at people from a historical and cultural perspective rather than a strictly psychological one. It is more concerned with those characteristics common to a culture. He believed that the aim of therapy is for patients to come to know themselves. Without knowledge of ourselves, we cannot know any person or thing. Fromm believed that patients come to therapy seeking satisfaction of their basic human needs, which are relatedness, transcendence, rootedness, a sense of identity, and a frame of orientation, and I believe that it has been discussed. Although transference and even countertransference may exist within this relationship. Transference occurs when a person redirects some of their feelings or desires for another person to an entirely different person. One example of transference is when you observe characteristics of your father in a new boss. You attribute fatherly feelings to this new boss. They can be good or bad feelings. Countertransference is redirection of therapist's feelings towards the client. For example, a therapist may meet a person who has extremely difficulty making conversation. The therapist may begin unwittingly to lead the conversation and provide additional prompts to the person in treatment to encourage discussion. As part of his attempt to achieve shared communication, Fromm asked patients to reveal their dreams. He believed that dreams as well as fairy tales and myths are expressed in symbolic language, the only universal language humans have developed, because dreams have meaning beyond their individual dreamer. Fromm would ask the patient's association to the dream material. Not all dream symbols, however, are universal. Some are accidental and depend on the dreamer's mood before going to sleep. Others are regional or national and depend on climate, geography, and dialect. Many symbols have several meanings because of the variety of experiences that are connected with them. For example, fire. Fire may symbolize warmth and home to some people, but death and destruction to others. Other example is the sun. Sun may represent a threat to desert people, but growth and life to people in cold climates. Overall, the goal of Fromm's psychotherapy was to work towards satisfaction of the basic human needs of relatedness, transcendence, rootedness, a sense of identity, and a frame of orientation. The therapist tries to accomplish this through shared communication in which the therapist is simply a human being rather than a scientist. Fromm believed that therapists should not try to be too scientific in understanding a patient. Only with the attitude of relatedness can another person be truly understood. The therapist should not view the patient as an illness or a thing, but as a person with the same human needs that all people possess. Fromm's method of investigation. Fromm gathered data on human personality from many sources, including psychotherapy, cultural anthropology, and psychohistory. In this section, we look briefly at his anthropological study of life in a Mexican village and his psychobiographical analysis of Adolf Hitler. Beginning in late 1950s and extending into the mid-1960s, Fromm and a group of psychologists, psychoanalysts, anthropologists, physicians, and statisticians studied social character. The team interviewed every adult and half of the children in this isolated farming village of 162 households and about 800 inhabitants. The people of the village were most farmers, earning a living from small plots of fertile land. As Fromm and Michael Maccabee described them, quote-unquote, they are selfish, suspicious of each other's motives, pessimistic about the future, and fatalistic. Many appear submissive and self-deprecatory, although they have the potential for rebelliousness and revolution. They feel inferior to city people, more stupid and less cultured. There is an overwhelming feeling of powerlessness to influence either nature or the industrial machine that bears down on them. After living among the villagers and gaining their acceptance, the research team employed an assortment of techniques designed to answer this and other questions. Included among the research tools were extensive interviews, dream reports, detailed questionnaires, and two projective techniques, the Rorschach ink blot test and the thematic apperception test. The Rorschach ink blot test is where the subject describes her perception and is recorded and interpreted in order to reveal thought processes and personality traits, while the thematic apperception test is a widely used protective test for the assessment of children and adults. It is designed to reveal an individual's perception of interpersonal relationships. Fromm believed that the marketing character was a product of modern commerce and that is the most likely to exist in society where trade is no longer personal and where people regard themselves as commodities. Not surprisingly, the research team found that the marketing orientation did not exist among the peasant villagers. However, the researchers did not find evidence for several other character types, the most common which was the non-productive receptive type. People of this orientation tend to look up the others and devoted much energy in trying to please those they regarded as superiors. The second most frequently found personality type was the productive hoarding character. People of this type were hardworking, productive, and independent. They usually farmed their own plot of land and relied on saving part of each crop for seed and for food in the event of a future crop failure. Hoarding rather than consuming was essential to their lives. The non-productive exploitative personality was identified as a third character orientation. Men of this type were most likely to get into knife or pistol fights, whereas the women tended to be malicious gossipers. Only about 10% of the population was predominantly exploitative, surprisingly small percentage considering the extreme poverty of the village. An even smaller number of inhabitants were described as productive exploitative, no more than 15 individuals in the whole village. Among them were the richest and most powerful men in the village, men who had accumulated capital by taking advantage of new agricultural technology as well as a recent increase in tourism. They had also taken advantage of the non-productive receptive villagers by keeping them economically dependent. In general, Fromm and Macoby reported a remarkable similarity between character orientation in this Mexican village and theoretical orientation Fromm had suggested from years ago. This anthropological study, of course, cannot be considered a confirmation of Fromm's theory. As one of the study's principal investigators, Fromm may simply have found what he had expected to find. A psychohistorical study of Hitler. Following Freud, Fromm examined historical documents in order to sketch a psychological portrait of a prominent person, a technique called psychohistory or psychobiography. The subject of Fromm's most complete psychobiographical study was Freud, but Fromm also wrote at length on life of Adolf Hitler. Fromm regarded Hitler as the world's most conspicuous example of a person with a syndrome of decay, possessing a combination of necrophilia, malignant narcissism, and incestuous symbiosis. All these characteristics, Fromm contended, did not make Hitler psychotic. They did, however, make him sick and dangerous man. Insisting that people not see Hitler as inhuman, Fromm concluded his psychohistory with these words, quote unquote, "Any analysis that would distort Hitler's picture by depriving him of his humanity would only intensify the tendency to be blind to the potential Hitlers unless they were horns." That would be all for this topic. Thank you.
Thank you for watching and listening. Stay hydrated, wash your hands, and be safe, everyone.